Good, man.
This is the overview.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jackson,
My name is Jacob. My name is Aaron.
Brendan.
and today we're going to be talking to you about the legalization of sex work in the United States.
And the ethics around it. What is sex work? According to Open Society Foundations, sex workers are adults who receive money or goods in exchange for consensual sexual services or erotic performances, either regularly or occasionally. So this could range from something like a subscription-based thing such as OnlyFans or providing physical sex work.
You might be asking yourself, other countries do this, why would we need this in the United States? And well, we believe it's beneficial because not only would it increase the amount of safety that we have and things that happen behind the scenes, it would also create a lot of job opportunities for a good amount of people. And most importantly, it could also be another way to increase income for a lot of states, and which could be redistributed back into an industry in order to make it safer and more reliable, as well as other avenues to put tax money into.
So, like, our concepts is, like, what can you buy and sell? Like, because we don't want to say, like, we don't have, like, objectify people and everything like that. And then the government's involvement. So with, with laws in place due to, like, for safety and, like, kind of, like, stuff like that. Because there's, like, our, like, legal brothels that have, like, government intervention and, like, other stuff like that. And then the discrimination and exploitation of sex workers, because some people might think lower of people if, because there's that stigma of sex workers. So, yeah.
And some of our ethical questions around sex work. What obligations do we have towards sex workers as people? And do these obligations change based on gender, race, or sexual orientation of the sex worker? And the other question is, would there need to be a union for sex workers, like if it were to be legalized, would they need to start like a workers' union? And if it were to start, how would it affect like their pay? And the last question was, what are the social and economic benefits of sex work in America?
So, of course, with such a polarizing topic, we have to talk about the downsides. And so, number one is the normalization of exploitation, as well as the social aspect to that. So, due to just a basic statistic, the more that something happens, the more numbers and the greater chance for something to happen. In that case, when you have such a thing as sex work, sometimes you're going to have negative things happen. And while it happens now, since it is mostly illegal in the United States, having something with more numbers, more knowledge, and more information will lead to a greater amount of documented exploitation. And then along with that is it'll go with the normalization of objectification. So when we have such a private thing become into the public and be monetized for that, there is a chance that it could further normalize and perpetuate the objectification of women specifically, in a way that it could reduce them to a mere commodity that could be bought and sold. And it could contribute to a culture that values women primarily based on their sexual availability, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And of course, along with that is that there is a public health concern. Obviously, not everything can be perfect 100% of the time, and there is a chance that sexually transmitted infections and diseases could be more easily spread with a more broad industry there. And lastly is that, just like what we talked about earlier, was that there goes into an ethical issue, especially with a humanitarian issue of whether or not people can really be bought and sold in this way, and more specifically for a single purpose.
Because you want to think you don't want to structure it as like buying and selling someone. It's more of like a service that you're purchasing from someone. So because purchasing like someone is kind of adjacent to like slavery, and slavery's not good. So you don't want to keep those like values when you're. You don't want to keep those values with something like this. Time for
Dialogue. Gotcha. Yeah, we're good. Start. Yeah, we got it. All right, we're good.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Did you guys hear about how in Rhode Island from 03 to 09, sex work was actually legal due to a loophole found in the law? It was like found to be legal indoors, but not on the street because of the legislation that changed.
That's crazy. Did you read if this saw any benefits?
Yeah, so the article that I read was talking about how there was a significant decrease in sexual assault cases and even a decline in STDs between 2003 and 2009.
In such a short time frame, it's cool to see how things like that would decline. Do you know why they outlawed it in 2009?
Well, the lawmakers saw that, the people were doing indoor sex crime because they couldn't sell it on the street, so they were doing it in like massage parlors and stuff like that. And so they didn't want that because sex work, they wanted it to be illegal throughout, so they went back and rewrote it so that there couldn't be a loophole.
So you guys think that sex work is something that you can just purchase from someone? I mean, personally, I think that people should be allowed to like sell sex to people if they want to, but there's a good like handful of reasons why other people might not like just selling sex to people.
I mean, like, yeah, like a lot of religious people probably be against the idea of selling something so sacred because, like, most religions view sex like sacred, like especially Christianity, like no sex before marriage and stuff because, like, they see it as like sacred.
Well, I mean, it also depends how you look at it too. Like, I mean, some people might view it as like buying and selling a body, while other people might think of it like selling a service or a good. And I think that kind of runs adjacent to the whole slavery thing, which is that not all sex workers would want to be compared to, especially just because they're making the conscious choice to go into that line of work. And I think that all of them would want to be respected for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, and then these days it's so different because with the use of technology expanded into a massive online market. Like, you think about something like OnlyFans, where users can pay like a monthly fee to subscribe to somebody. Is like that's like a good and a service type thing that they're paying for. And it's also like important to say that not all content on OnlyFans is sexual, but that is the primary thing on that site. But it's because other people use Patreon or something else like that.
I think a lot of people are already purchasing and selling sexual content online, but it would be interesting to see a world where sex workers are able to safely like sell their services to like an on-site consumer, because there might be because I'm sure that there'd be a lot of people that would want to be purchasing something like that.
So, like, let's say like sex work was legalized like right now. How do you guys think the government would like play a role in something like that? Like, would they be able to like tax it, or like, what long-term effects do you see like happening from this change?
Well, I'm sure the government would love to get a bunch of tax money from this. I think that the government would do at least an alright job of introducing and protecting something as sensitive as this, and I really think they would really love to tax that income due to the amount of money that other sources like this already bring in. And now, as what they do with those taxes, I mean, they could redistribute it into creating a safer environment for this industry, using the industry to invest in the industry, and I'm pretty sure they could run a smooth operation there.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I think that the government would make a safer space for sex workers. According to an article by Business Insider, a study was done in San Francisco, which had found that 82% of sex workers had been sexually assaulted, while 68% of sex workers had been used non-consensually. And then later on, it goes to say that sex workers in Las Vegas have to get monthly tested for HIV and syphilis, while they weekly get tested for things such as gonorrhea and chlamydia. In Vegas, they also require the use of condoms inside all sex work areas. So I think laws like that and rules like that would create a much safer space in the sex work industry, because you would be able to safely have access to those types of things.
Yeah, no, and those are all good ideas. 'Cause I think a lot of brothels could adopt those safety measures and even make them kind of like a laws, especially if the government were to step in and say that if a brothel's gonna be a legal thing to have in a certain area, then they have to have those type of restrictions, I guess, and practices in place just for the overall health of everybody there.
But
What Jackson was saying too, just real quick, I like how you were talking about how they could use the taxes, the sex workers when they go to pay taxes, they could use those taxes to either reinvest in the industry, or they could use it to just make
streamline it.
yeah, or they could just make it use it for roads or highways or better education and schooling systems. That's cool.
Yeah, but all jokes aside, what kind of discrimination do we think would be happening in this new community? Sorry. I know that a lot of sex workers are women, but I also know that they're also, sorry, wrong choice of words there, are also male, non-binary, and transgender sex workers that could also face the same discrimination, if not more. Sorry, guys.
Y'all just take it a second. Take a breath.
Aaron, I can say your piece.
Okay.
It's on me.
All right, go.
It's true. You said homosexual because there are a lot of people that could possibly face discrimination due to their choice of being sex work, because sex work is not really viewed good in society. So yeah.
Yeah, well, sex work is a respectable job to take on. A lot of people may think otherwise. Like we had said earlier, a lot of people believe that sex is a very sacred thing, and even if you're not based on religion, your own personal beliefs, you just may think that it's not something that should just be thrown around so openly. I'm not sure a lot of people like that kind of thing.
I mean, I did find this one article put out by the Samuel Center for Social Connectedness, where they were talking about discrimination against sex workers, and that there were instances where a bunch of banks like JP Morgan, Chase, Visa, PayPal, where they were closing down small businesses that were connected to these kind of places for unethical reasons without proof, and that was back in 2008.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of stigmatism around sex workers. A lot of people believe that sex workers, particularly women, do nothing but carry STDs and live a sad and dirty lifestyle, just kind of grungy and not exactly up to the standard that people would say is normal. And while that could have been the case 40, 50 years ago, things today have changed so much that there would be no reason for anyone to believe that. And it is hard to change the world's mind on this issue, but with the proper research and evidence, it should be as hard, shouldn't be as hard as you think.
So we think it possible for each of happiness that sex work could bring total happiness, what do you agree with that? Sex workers.
I think in regards to the virtue of happiness surrounding sex work, I believe that the legalization of it would make a lot of people happy. The government would be happy because they'd be making a bunch of jobs for a bunch of people. And they could use those jobs to, like we had talked about earlier, take in more tax money. The sex workers would be happy because their jobs would be able to be done safely, and consumers would be happy because they could safely purchase a service that they purchase.
Yeah, how do you think that sex work affects the ethics of a relationship? Being in a relationship with a sex worker must be very different than being in a normal relationship.
Yeah, but the stigma is really around just as not accepted by society. guess like if it becomes like legal and like society kind of like accepts it more, then like maybe people in like relationships will probably
Yeah.
accept it more because it's like a more acceptable thing in society.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because there's a lot of ways that someone could see into it. Traditionally, a lot of couples practice monogamy, which is a practice of just being with like your significant other. It's just you and them. But there are a lot of other relationships too that practice kind of like an open relationship type thing where they are like at their core it's them two, but sometimes they'll like go out and like have like
Another partner.
yeah, like another partner. So stuff like that where sex work, I feel like it just depends on what you believe on a personal level and not really like as a whole what other people.
No, I agree. But you know, it's based on your upbringing or your religion, and you might just not agree with a spouse that's involved in that kind of work.
Yeah.
Is it me now? All right. My bad.
What about some of the arguments against sex work? Like, aren't these workers just selling themselves for brands or like their phone bills and stuff?
I mean, like with the normalization of sex work, it might make it hard to differentiate between sex work and sex trafficking. Like the European Center for Law and Justice wrote an article about the legalization of sex work in the Netherlands, and in a part of the article, it talked about one woman who was forced into sex work, and she claims it's like she's being sold like an item in a shop, which I mean is true.
I mean, that's interesting because that kind of like explains why people would want to like legalize it. I mean, like other countries like Netherlands, they have sex legal, and I mean Belgium too. Like they recently legalized it in 2022.
No, I agree with Erin. You know, she talks about how she was forced into it, right? Like, I think it'd be a very different experience for people that would have it be voluntary versus involuntary in that industry.
And I think there's definitely a big line between sex work and sex trafficking. Obviously, sex trafficking is never something that you would want to happen, or even talk about having it become like a real
Like thing. Yeah. No. No. Yeah. I mean.
I believe that if you want to stay on the, I believe that that woman, what that woman went through was terrible, and that a person should be able to be purchased or sold for their body.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean over there, but like, don't you think like another downside to this would be like seeing women or sex workers as objects? Like, don't you think that within the time and normalization of sex work, people will be like desensitized to sex workers and treat them as like lesser?
I mean, like I think like in time people will change their minds about it and develop poor view about sex work.
Just asking.
I mean, you know, I mean, over time, I mean, the more it's in society, you know, the more that people, I think, could go back or forth. I think that's more of a multi-layered issue.
Could be more normalized.
What part of the region you're in?
Yeah.
What would you think about decriminalizing sex work as opposed to making it fully legal? Would you think it would have the same effect?
Well, if we're basing those on just like the bare definitions, then if you just decriminalize it, it would still make it like illegal, but you couldn't be prosecuted for it. But even though it's like a good alternative, because it's still illegal, it would make those kind of workers hard to be able to work in a safe and sanctioned environment. That would kind of ruin the point, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like you could also compare it to like weed too, because like weed is decriminalized in a lot of places, a lot of states, especially around us, like Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois. But it's not like fully legal. Like you can only have a certain amount of on you. Like I think it's like you can have like 0.4 ounces on you, and it's just a ticket if you get stopped by a police officer. And yeah, so it's like you could still have sex work, but it's wouldn't be fully legal. It's just decriminalized, so people can still go to the police and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, because like for years, like people's saw weed as like an abusive drug, and kind of like have like similar effects like cocaine or something. And like recently, people have like done like research on it and found like it's not like as bad as it as people made it to be. So I think that could probably could probably be the same for sex work.
I'm on the same page. I think sex work is viewed not as well as it should be, but after like society changes its views on it, just like weed, like a lot of people didn't really like weed and they weren't really for it and they viewed it as bad, but after like more research and stuff came out about it, a lot of people had changed their minds as it was implemented in our country.
Yeah, I mean, not every state is it that they're, weed's legal,
Yeah.
like Indiana, but I feel like some people, I think will come around to view that the longer that it's available.
Yeah, no, like not only their views, but like political affiliations as well. Like liberal states and cities would be like more agreeing to legalize sex work compared to conservative states, which could be against it, or vice versa, depending on like what the views that the candidates hold.
But if it were legalized, I mean, do you guys think that it would only be legalized for like indoor work, or do you think it would be kind of like Las Vegas where they were allowed to advertise it?
I think that if you did something kind of like indoor and kept it very like secret, like non-discreet, I think a lot of people would be for that because a lot of people just wouldn't want that like out in their face, kind of advertised. Like if they're with their family or their children, they don't really want those images like imposed on their children at such like a young age. So I think if it were to be legalized, I think keeping it kind of indoor and kind of away from like just children and stuff would be good.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that.
Good talk, boys.
All right.
See you guys next week.
I know we're over time, but let's get a question in here so we can have them ask the
60
question.
minutes.
Oh shit.
Do you think this ruling would be a federal level like ruling, or would that be up to the states? Like, do you think it should be up to the states?
I
or
mean,
federal government?
I think it
Great
should
question.
I think it should be up to the states because if it was a countrywide thing, a lot of people wouldn't be on board with it. But state-wise, I feel like I feel like everyone would be more on board with it being statewide and not just the whole country all at once.
Yeah.
Mallory?
That's good.
Yeah, I know you guys talked a lot about the ethics of happiness, but I know a lot of sex workers, they experience a lot of like mental issues
Yeah.
and depression. Do you feel like there's a way that we could like go around that or support the profession that it wouldn't be as big?
I mean, like, especially if like they were to like form a union and stuff like that, there could be like mental health like outreaches and stuff like that. Like you can do like telehealth and do like stuff like that.
Even like the healthcare.
Exactly. Yeah.
I feel like as like if you were to be a sex worker, the healthcare aspect of it would be like very wide. So I'm sure there'd be a lot of like good resources for therapy.
But also thinking about it just subjectively, I mean, what they're going through right now, I feel like if they were in a much more open environment where it's much more accepted, I think that they, a lot of their
like that.
self-identity and things where, it's where they feel like they belong. And also the fact that they'd be a lot safer if it was sanctioned. So I feel like it'd take a lot of the stress out of the situation.
Yeah.
We have time for one more. Caleb.
Do you think like